Just going to go over this really quick. This is the afternoon session, not the morning session for those that missed that there. But I got a little project going on at the Western Research Farm with Wayne Rouse and at Stender, Iowa. And it's a Berkshire study that we initiated. I was asked the questions early on when I first got on board, how do you feed Berkshires? Now, I'm coming from a different world. I was on the commercial side, should be pretty much the same, went online, tried to find some stuff. Couldn't really find some really good documented information other than stuff that actually Colin worked with back in another decade now. And so wanted to see what the newer generation Berkshires were doing and develop some growth curves, some intake curves, and then get some feeding recommendations to be able to put out there. And with the follow-up of that, that's where Dave's going to come in on where do we take it from this stage, and I'll tell you where we're going from our stage from the research side. So I got Dr. Mabry involved, Dr. Honeyman, Wayne Rouse, Dave Stender, and myself. This has all been sponsored by the Iowa Pork Producers Association, and we're here today to talk about my Berkshire study. We call this our preliminary study. We have 3 mini hoops, which I'm going to show. It's split into 2. We've been doing some split sex feeding on there. So we started out with each trial with 18 gilts, 18 barrels. When they came in, they were at different weight ranges, so that added to the study, so we blocked them by weight. We started our first group in November. That's our winter season. Then last May, we started another group, and that's our summer season, and we're doing a third replicate. We just started here back in November, and we'll do another one in the summer. So we'll have 2 seasons, 2 times, replicate 2 times with barrels and gilts, split sex feeding. We do some scan. We weigh them about every 21 days. I'm pressing the wrong button. 21 days. At about approaching 90 pounds, we started doing back fat, not thinking that there's really going to be any differences at that time, but we wanted to have a good point, starting point, to be able to detect any differences as we go along here. Measuring average daily feed intake, average daily gain, feed efficiency, getting back fat deposition rates, loin eye growth rates, to develop lean intake curves, gain curves. We're selling them through a marketing plan that's with Heritage Pork, and they're being slaughtered and processed at Sig Boyden, or at Sig International at Boyden, Iowa. These are our picture of our 3 mini hoops that we have. They're about 15 by 26 in width and depth with a peak height of around 12 feet. And back behind those is our 3 other full mid-size hoops. So we limited on the number of pigs we could do in the time we had. So we went with the 36 using the mini hoops. And initially I was kind of questionable how it's going to work. It's been working out fantastic. It's a good little study facilities for us to work through. That picture doesn't show up, but the point was to try to, this is split in half right here, barrels on one side, gilts on the other, with individual waters and feeders. Here we're inside scanning with Dallas McDermott with Max Scan. We've got Wayne and Larry in the background. These are my Berkshire pigs, as I like to call them. They're almost market weight at this time. This is the group that was getting ready to be marketed in the spring. They started in November. Excellent environment. The growth rates were fantastic, well beyond my expectations. My understanding that Berkshires were slow growers, big eaters. I didn't see that, to the point that we started marketing 30 days earlier than what I projected. We kind of messed up our media schedules on that, but that's okay. Got me out of those. Quickly on the results, we started out approximately 50 pounds on both trials. We had different weight blocks. We targeted an average ending weight at 270 pounds. We thought we may want to try to go up to 300, but due to back depth in that, we knew we had peaked. So we backed off on the 300 and went down to 270. And that was, I guess, 55 pounds average between the two trials. The trial 1 being the winter, trial 2 being the summer, and then giving the summary on the gilts and barrel to combine those two and then overall. So overall, we started out around 55 pounds. Sold them at an average 275 pounds. Barrels and gilts kind of split there in terms of growth rates. Averaged 113 days for that time period. Eating really well at 6.2 pounds. Average daily gain for all of them was a 1.9, with the feed efficiency right around the 3.2. Feed efficiency in the wintertime was a lot higher than this in the summertime, which would be things that we would expect. On scanning, laying this slide out here, again, we started around 90 pounds. It was trying to shoot for that, where I thought that we'd start seeing differences in separation between the barrels and the gilt and back fat deposition rates. So 90 pounds, and then 21 days later, so we ended up with about 6 points for our back fat deposition curve and for our loin deposition curves to come up with our lean deposition curves. Overall, we started out right around 4/10 of an inch back fat, averaging right at almost 1 1/10 overall, with the barrels being averaging almost 1.3 and the gilts being 0.9. Very big difference between the barrels and gilts, a lot more than what I expected, in how they laid on their back fat. Don't typically see this on the commercial side, but on this side here, gilts were totally different than the barrels, which hopefully in the reps 3 and 4, if we see this difference here, is it going to change my thought process of where we need to be nutritionally to feed the gilts and the versus the barrels, and also maybe making suggestions that you market your barrels and gilts totally different than what we marketed them here, trying to maximize returns based on meat quality and back fat depth. The next step after I pulled this all the things together is to try to figure out how these pigs grow with the information that I have. Develop curves, what I call modeling, so I can start doing some predictions and making some expectations to be able to take out to advise producers with. And these are the nice clean curves from all the information we have. And I will show you where I start from in another way. But right here, the first one, the black line, is the barrels in the wintertime. The red is the gilts during the wintertime. The blue straight line was the barrels in the summer. And the green straight line is the gilt intake during the summer. My expectations for their intake, especially when comparing to the commercial side, is that we would get these nice curve-shaped intakes. What I didn't expect was on the second trial in the summer that we'd kind of get straight lines, and I need to go back and look at our temperature data to see if that was an influence on that. Average daily gain curves. Black, again, is the barrels in the wintertime. Blue is barrels in the summertime. Red is the gilts in the wintertime. Green is the gilts in the summertime. These were very similar to what I expected. We see the difference between the summer and the winter between the two sexes. We see the differences between the two sexes. So these are typically what I'd like to see and expected to see, which when you go back and look at feed efficiency, totally gives me different curves again, which I didn't expect. But I got really nice smooth lines that now I can take and put into my computer program, develop a model to work on some expectations. I'm looking at published data that wherever I can find it and compare that to my model, which is some of the stuff that Dave's going to go into. Back fat curves. Barrels winter is black, barrels, summer is in blue, gilts, red is winter, gilts, green. Something I didn't expect was these lines being as straight as they are over time, and it's by body weight. But the intercept is pretty much similar there, but I have now something I wasn't expecting at all was 4 lines with different deposition rates. I had hoped to see the same slope of these lines between the barrels, between winter and summer, and the same slope between the gilts between winter and summer. I expected differences between barrels and gilts, but now I have 4 different slopes, which is requiring us to go back and do a 3rd replicate and a 4th replicate to see if this holds or if we get different results. What I didn't expect was how nice the loini depth deposition is. I have 4 lines that are almost exactly the same curve. The winter barrels is the bottom line, the black line. It's different, which I would have expected in the wintertime versus summer. But my 2 gilts, winter and summer, are almost laying on top of each other, which gives me a great idea that I can predict the loini area over time with the body weights and be able to have more confidence in being able to take and applying that outside the research trial and try to get some more information on out there in the field or out from other producers, niche producers. Taking those back fat, taking the loini, we use the ultrasonic equation to get percent lean, and dang it, over time we start out at 90 pounds, predicting what the lean is or calculating what the percent lean is, to out to around 200 or 300 pounds, which we had some individuals go out that heavy. Percent lean goes down as we expect. It's different for the barrels in the wintertime than for barrels in the summertime. It's different for the gilts in the summertime versus that in the wintertime. Those differences are still in place, but there's a wider range of differences between the barrels versus that difference between the gilts between the 2 seasons. That I wasn't expecting as much. So I do have some differences. I do need to do some replications to follow up on this, in which we currently are working on. So in summary, I kind of summarized this up here. I expected barrels and gilts to be different, which they were. I expected to be some seasonal differences, which there were. I saw differences in back fat depositions between sex and between season. I didn't see loin depth changing. So muscle accretion is not as different as what I was originally thought about. So we calculated percent lean. We're going to see the differences. And I can now start applying that to what I call my modeling and be able to ask the questions. What do you have on your farm? And try to take that information and see how good my model is in projecting things. Because the better I am at projecting things, the better I can give recommendations to producers to better allow for tweaking to the operation, production practices, knowing the best place to sell. That's what I'm proposing to the group here that are here today, and also we're going to go out and try to stimulate this, is to validate these results with additional replications, being able to test my model equations, adjust the nutrition performance because of the differences I now know, because I didn't know how to feed them before, and then start beginning to put together a producer database on the niche and market side, not only for the Berkshires, but for any other production systems that are out there. In the end is to give better recommendations, be better prepared to go out and help producers on the niche market side. So, really quickly here, just give you a little history how my nice lines, don't actually start out as nice lines. They start out with all these little dots. And people can say this is massaging the diet. No, it's doing regression and doing statistical analysis to start getting that nice straight line there. This one here is on back fat, for example. If I take it and start working with the numbers, I separated by sex, so now I got the barrels and I got the gills, so now I have two different sets of data points that make more sense, which now I can take and start making recommendations nutritionally and also to understand what the lysine or amino acid requirements are on a per day basis to get these really nice curves looking here, but then again taking them out and testing them out in the field to what it actually is. And in this particular slide, this is my basis for doing anything with commercial groups. And I want to be able to have a similar slide here in a couple, or within another year, to have one on the Berkshires and any other groups that I'm working with, that this is what we're using for benchmarks. Where are we at within those benchmarks? Are we close, or are we off base, or where do we need to tweak it at? Same for the intake and gain curve here. Really nice for this. I want to get to that point so we can make better decisions. Now, this is a slide here where in my intake curve, I have actually gone, and this is what I've done with after I developed the curve, is to go out and get actual data from the field, graph it out, plot it out, and then compare it onto my model. The black line is my model curve, and then I have 3 individual sites over different years just to test to see how well my curves are, and estimation and predictions are doing. And I'm kind of excited about how well these came out, because I didn't have to go back and adjust my curves any. Overall, over time, when I work with databases, it's become more clear that as we understand pork production, if a pig eats, it should gain. If it doesn't eat, it's not going to gain. And in this slide here, I'm trying to show the intake, which is in the brown, and the gain on the right vertical side is the black line, and how they should mirror. If we got good information, good data, they should come close to mirroring each other. That's where I want to take with our database here, is be able to help producers go, did they eat? Did they gain? If not, why didn't they? Is it the feed program, or is it something else going on? That's just a quick presentation from our research side and where I want to go. David Stender's up next to talk about the next step, where we want to take this and try to get your help and cooperation.
And we're going to move on from here, and this is the feed, taking the research work and applying it to your individual farms is what I'm going to kind of explore as a topic here in the next few minutes. Is it, can we take actual research work on the farm and on a research farm at Iowa State and put it into your operation? And I think we can try to do that. So first of all, it's about measuring where you are, and we've done some data in the past. It's been whole farm research, and I remember some of the information, like the whole farm feed efficiency. We're talking about boars, sows, and all the pigs, whole farm versus gain, and when we're talking about niche production, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when the pigs are outside. I mean, feed can get wasted. I mean, it can rain on it. The feeders can get plugged and all that. And the productivity of the sow is hugely variable in the weather. You know, on really hot days, trying to farrow in a pen, it's really tough to keep the litter of 10 alive. The sow just doesn't care about the pigs and lays on them. So when we did the analysis, what we found out is there's a pretty wide disparity in feed efficiency, and about a third of the farms were over 400, like 450 pounds of feed per 100 pounds of gain, and about a third of the farms were at about 350. And so the 450, they're the large factors. I mean, and you got to go back and you got to look at your reproduction and just-in feeders and pellet size, particle size of feed, and all those kinds of things. This seminar, we're not going to concentrate on those kinds of topics. What we're going to talk about here is getting the 350 feed efficiency better. All right, so we're talking about trying to take the better managers in niche production and making them better is what we're going to do in this. And so we have to measure it. So first of all, what is an intake curve? You guys know what it is? I mean, basically we're going to do intake curve and lean gain. Intake curve is basically at any weight, how much are those pigs going to eat? So at 20 pounds or at 60 pounds, they're eating about 3 pounds, 2.9 pounds of feed. And at 200 pounds, they're eating somewhere between 5.3 and 5.7 pounds, depending on whether they're a gill or a barrel. So we're thinking, how are we going to get intake curves for operations? And you guys already have them. Do you guys know that? You already have an intake curve, and it's called a feed budget. And if you're looking at the next, and what we're going to try to do is take your feed budgets, and Dr. Matt Swantek has figured out a way to take actual feed delivery dates and weight of feed and the number of pigs on feed and develop an intake curve for your pigs. And so we've got some sample record data sheets that we're going to pass out to you, and what we want you to do is participate with us in collecting some data, because the industry doesn't know really. It's all commercial now. We really don't know the growth and intake curve of niche pigs as an industry-wide. And the best way to find out is yourself. How much are your pigs eating in how many days and how many pigs on test? And so that's really what we want to get to. At Iowa State, we're going to put these forms up on the website and make them downloadable. There's basically three kinds of records that we're doing at Iowa State. One would be whole farm enterprise records, where we just kind of have a break even for the whole farm, feed efficiency for the whole farm. The second record that you guys should know about is sow records, and we have individual sow management record system available for niche pigs, and it will do a pregnancy report, and it'll do farrowing rate, and it'll track the parities of the sows and parity records and sow cards and all those kinds of things, so that you could do productivity. The third kind of record, and we're talking about today, is grow finisher closeout records. And that's what we really want to concentrate on today, is those kind of records. And like I said, what we need to get your growth rate, we're going to need the in-weight, out-weight, and then the death loss, because that's the inventory. How many pigs are eating the feed at any given time, and then the weight and the date of feed delivery. How many pounds of feed did you deliver, and what days did you deliver them? And how many pigs were eating on that feed during that period of time? And so that's how we're going to get that kind of data. And there's two closeout possibilities. The one would be the sheet that he's passing out that says baseline, and that'd be just a really simple, quick and dirty one-page closeout sheet. The other would be group tracker software that we have available on the ipic.iastate.edu website. Okay, and that's an Excel spreadsheet that's available for $50. I think is the cost of that. This is the quick and dirty, the one that says the baseline, and basically that's in and out weight, feed, pounds and dollars in the kill sheet, along with some variable costs on that one. This is the other sheet in the front of the one we just handed out, and this would be the one where we would need to get your intake curve data from. And we would email this back to either myself or Matt, and it's basically you need the date, how many pigs are on, and the pig inventory is part of that sheet too. But the date, what date the feed was delivered, how many tons you delivered, and how many pigs were eaten on that ton of feed is what we need. So we know, then we can have total pig days and total pounds of feed during those pig days, and calculate how many pounds of feed each pig eats, and email those back to us. Second set of eyes, and we're gonna work with this data. I'm going to show you how we're gonna work with this data. The first thing you need to know before you start doing this is that it's not easy to remember which load of feed went to which batch of pigs, and getting it on the right paper with the right decimal point in the right place, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be errors in the records. And what we have devised is a check system to see if the data is pure. And this is something that the commercial people probably don't use much either. And it's another idea of Dr. Matt Swantek. But if you take, and we're looking at this curve, and this is a cumulative feed intake. So we take the total pounds of feed divided by the total head day, and we kind of balance out your feed deliveries over that line, and we should see a feed intake curve that's smooth, that's nice, and a smaller pig should eat less, a bigger pig should eat more, and they should uniformly eat more and more and more as they grow. Now, if we see a cumulative data with a hiccup, now how can it be that a 35-pound pig is eating more than an 80-pound pig? And we say that's not really happening. And the other thing would be is the feeder only holds 4 ton. We only can put 4 ton of feed in. How is it that we delivered 8 ton of feed into a feeder that only holds 4 tons? Over a period of time, and the pigs only ate 600 pounds during that time. So there is no way that record could be right. And so what we have to do in order to get good data to look at, to make decisions on, is that it has to be good data. And I guess what I'm telling you is we got a tool to verify it, to make sure that the data is good data. Now let me show you what we can do once we get that good data. Matt showed you the research curves from Iowa State, and we're going to start collecting more closeouts from niche producers. We've got some already participating, and get better and better average curves. And so we'll know what the average niche producer is doing. Once we get good records and we take the errors out of the records, what Matt was saying before is that what the pig eats should equal what the pig gains. It's about calories. If we eat more calories, they should grow faster. If they eat less calories, they should grow slower. And once we get that to track in your records, it's a powerful, powerful tool that we can use for management of your niche farm. In the next slide here, once we get in the R squared there, R squared means predictability, that we can predict with R squared is 8.81. We can predict with an 81% accuracy that if that pig is eating 5 pounds of feed, it's going to be gaining X amount of gain. And we're pretty almost certain, almost for sure that that's happening. When you first start these data, you may be getting 0.2 accuracy. I mean, it's just all over the board until you get your data good. Once you have your data that's got the errors out of it, and we know what your curve is for your genetics, for your farm, then we have a tool. Then we have a fantastic tool that we can use. And we get some data in that we can compare it to. So first thing we do, once we get your curve done for your specific farm, is we say, how does it compare with the Berkshires at Castana? How does it compare with the Durocs in eastern Iowa? And we'll have the average curve, and you'll have your curve, and say, are your pigs growing faster or slower than average? Are your pigs eating more or less than average? And of course, if they're eating less and growing faster, that's what? Better feed efficiency? If they're eating more and growing slower, that's rotten feed efficiency. You see what and the feed efficiency is a ratio of those two. And so we're gonna be talking about dollars of feed and saving dollars of feed. So does it match the curve? If it's yes, then we have two things that we can do automatically. And the first one is if I know at any given time how many pounds that pig weighs and what it's eating, then I can formulate that diet exactly to the nutrients. If I don't know a 200-pound pig, if I don't know if it's eating 4 pounds or eating 6 pounds, I could be 20% off on my nutrient analysis. And if I know my curve and if I know what they're eating and I know at the end, I know what percent lean they are, I can just calculate back and I know exactly how much protein, lysine, threonine, amino acids to feed to any given weight pig. That's the first application. It's specific nutrient program to your operation. The second application is that once you know this curve, and then you use every time you grind feed, you use it as a checkpoint. And I'll show you this in the last slide again. But you check, and okay, the first delivery is supposed to be on May 2nd. What if the pig is done eating feed and got it all done already in April? So if the first delivery, they're 3 days ahead, and the second delivery of feed, they're 5 days ahead, and the third delivery of feed, they're 8 days ahead, guess what? Those pigs are going to be ready to market earlier than what you think. All right, the other way. What if they're 4 days behind and the second batch of your normal growth curve, right? Once you get a normal growth curve, what if the first delivery is 4 days behind, the second delivery is 6 days behind, the third delivery is 8 days behind? Guess what? They're not going to be ready for market when you thought they would be. And once we get your records, the second really, really powerful is to predict when those pigs, no more 300-pound, oops, they grew too fast, missed the grid kind of thing. And you use the numbers then to verify that. Before we get there, the more common thing that's going to happen is going to be, does your curve match the average? The more common answer is going to be no. They didn't grow as fast as the model predicted. They ate a lot, but they didn't grow as fast. Well, why not? What would cause them to eat more feed and not grow as fast? What kinds of things? So you say, oh, I'm looking for 10% of feed that should have been going to gain but didn't. So what's the list? And so we use it as a diagnostic. You better adjust your feeders differently. Because that feed, if the intake curve is right, if the pigs eat it, they should have gained. If the feed disappears and they didn't gain, then maybe the feed got wasted. You follow? And you use it as a diagnostic. What about underlying health problems? And then they're not eating the feed, right, and not growing. So that gives you a clue. They're probably not going to eat quite as well. But maybe it's a chronic kind of condition that you don't even know. The records are gonna make you question those kinds of things. You're gonna look at that kind of a situation. Is it chronic? It could be that you're not feeding enough lysine, not threonine, protein, that your nutrients are deficient. They're eating enough feed, but they're not growing enough because there's not enough nutrient density in the ration to grow the pigs like they're supposed to be. So that would be a diagnostic thing you'd want to look at. Could be the worms are eating the feed, especially in niche. If you're out in dirt, and if you're not worming those pigs periodically, I mean, worm loads sneak up on you, and it can actually kill a pig if you don't watch it. And so all of a sudden, you're eating a lot of feed. Growth rate isn't nearly what it should be. Feed efficiency is poor. Check that. Thermal neutral issues, and we'll have to. You can see in the handout sheet, there's one page that has temperature charts. We'll want to get some temperature readings because if for every degree that you go below the thermal neutral zone, and niche pigs are, of course, outside in the wintertime, for every degree you take off about 40 calories of energy on the curve. And so we have to adjust the curve for the thermal neutral zone. I mean, because they're going to eat more feed and grow slower in cold weather, and so we need to know those cold weather periods of time. finally, genetics that are underperforming for what you think, and there could be other things in the management that we haven't thought about. But that's the cool thing about a curve, is that you're looking for these things. And you have the standard. And so if we can get you to get us some data so that you have the standard, we can be looking for those kinds of things. So the final slide that we've got, and this is how it puts it all together, and this is what I was talking about earlier, is using it as a diagnostic. There are the dates. And your feed budget, you're going to set it up so that each pig is going to eat maybe 80 pounds of first budget feed. So you've got 100 pigs and 8,000 pounds delivered, and they're going to and we calculate based on the standard curve exactly when that feed should be gone, which would be the 25th of September. And again, if it's gone before that, what's that tell you? They're eating more. And if they're eating more and there's not a worm problem, there's not a health problem, there's not a feed wastage problem, if they're eating more and we have a good curve, that means what? They're growing faster. And so then we do the checkpoints, and it's set up actually on day 77. On this date, you actually start making decisions about when the first barrels are going to be big enough to sell, because you'll know. Is it going to be from that date? Are they 5 days ahead? Are they 6 days behind? And they'll vary a little bit from group to group based on the weather, based on the health status. I mean, from group to group, you sometimes people get surprised, and all of a sudden you have everything that's too big that you're selling to market. And this also applies to commodity pigs, to commercial systems as well as niche. But there's no reason, if we can get this database going and this intake curve going, there's no reason that we can't accurately predict the date that the first draft of pigs comes out of those pigs, out of that set of pigs.